Joe Biden is proposing to give you a $25,000 tax credit so that you can buy a home. But is he really though? Joe Biden is proposing something called the FirstTime Homebuyer tax credit. Really though, it's not a tax credit. He's proposing to give you $25,000 as settlement towards closing costs or down payment. The drafted version of this legislation is called the Down Payment Toward Equity Act of 2021. This program is currently being discussed in the House of Representatives. You're going to get access to the $25,000 if you're buying a residential property or a multifamily that's 1 to 4 units. The bill seeks to narrow the homeownership gap by targeting first-generational homeowners. The possibility of receiving $25,000 towards the purchase of your first home sounds great, but there are many contingencies in place that might make it hard to access this $25,000 credit. Here are some of the contingencies. As a home buyer, you only receive access to this credit if you haven't owned a home in the last 3 years, if your parents have never owned a home. If they have owned a home, the only way you have access to the credit is if they dealt with a hardship situation, like short sale or foreclosure. You also qualify for this $25,000 credit if you've been in foster care. So in layman's terms, you had to almost had no leverage in life and been in a really bad situation in order to qualify. That just doesn't seem fair to me. Another way you qualify for this $25,000 is if you belong to a group that's been socially disadvantaged or subjected to racial or ethnic prejudices. In fact, in this case, you get an additional $5,000. Go Joe. So let's just say this bill passes and now you get access to $25,000. How do you actually receive that? Well, what they're proposing right now is that state finance agencies, banks and otherwise, administer the program and distribute the funds. However, they can delegate distributing the funds to community-based nonprofits or community development credit unions. So that's the proposed bill in a nutshell. But now let me tell you what I think about the bill. Mostly, I think the bill is ridiculous. I think that if you're gonna give people $25,000, that's great, but do it the right way. Don't make people have to have grown up in a bad situation. It's ridiculous that you had to be in foster care in order to qualify for this. It's ridiculous that you couldn't come from a family or parents of homeownership to qualify for this. It's ridiculous that you have to belong to a community who has been discriminated against or socially, put in a bad situation. I think that's ridiculous. I think that if you want to help people buy homes and close the wealth gap and make homeowners in the country, give access to people who don't own homes already. This $25,000 tax credit should be available to new homeowners in the market, one, to assist us with the student loan debt crisis that we're all in, and alleviate some of that overall debt and stress that we have. Just like everything else, the government has a great idea, so they think. But just like every great idea that they have, they fail to execute it properly. The reason that they fail to execute this properly is because only people of privilege, to my assumption, are at the table discussing this. I imagine that they're not bringing people to the table who come from the lack of home ownership in their family. I imagine that young people that are entering the market, millennials who don't do anything, are not at the table having an opinion on what needs to happen for this bill. I think this bill is kind of ridiculous, and I hope by the time it passes, it's cleaned up a lot. Now, if your life was a little bit okay and you don't qualify to receive the $25,000, what are your options as a new homeowner or a first-time home buyer? In DC, Maryland, Virginia, there are programs that allow you to put down as little as 1%, and most first-time home buyers are putting down 3%. So a lot of these programs that offer down payment assistance or closing cost assistance already exist. So what I want you to understand is that you should not drag your feet. You should not wait for Joe Biden and the government to get this right. You probably already qualify for a down payment assistance program. So if you're in the market to buy a house, contact me and I'll put you in the right direction. Don't wait for these people to figure it out. So I don't want to bash this bill without giving you access to the real information. So I put a link in the comments from housingwire.com that outlines the bill just like I did on this video. If you have any questions, put them in the comments so we can have a full discussion and everyone can be informed. I'm looking forward to hearing what you think. I told you, me and mine's to me, lose too much, I lose too much. Step on stage, the girl do too much. I guess it's cause the mama ain't do